Welcome to Charting with Dr. McNeil. Greetings, everyone. This is Dr. Patsy McNeil. We're going to start off here talking about women in medicine. That's the topic of our podcast today. Now, according to the Association of American Medical Colleges, women account for more than 1/3 of active physicians, and expanding their presence to become a majority or significant share of active physicians in certain specialties such as OB and pediatrics and gynecology and dermatology and psychiatry, pathology as well. But things are changing in different ways that we need to pay attention to as far as being women in medicine. For the first time in 2019, women made up about 50% of medical students, which is a really big accomplishment considering how little it was back when I was even in training. But unfortunately, one study from JAMA reported that within 6 years of completing training, 22.6% of women physicians were not working full-time as compared to 3.6% of male physicians. So in other words, 50% of the medical school classes, but then you get out, you start working as an attending and, faculty, and you're decreasing as far as the number of women who adhere to being full-time physicians. And the curious question, of course, is why is that? So we have an expanding presence of women in medicine in one way, but then shrinking in another. And so these and other things are of interest in speaking today to our participants in the podcast. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves to you. First, Cynthia Plate.
Thanks for having us here. I'm Dr. Cynthia Plate. I'm a breast cancer surgeon. I started out as a general surgeon and really have been with Adventist Healthcare for 21 years. But now I work for Maryland Oncology Hematology, but still working at Adventist.
All right. We also have Dr. Senda Beltaifa.
Thank you for having us. I'm Dr. Senda Beltaifa. I'm a pathologist. I lived and studied in 3 countries, traveled with my husband because of his job. I had 3 children along the way, and I speak 3 languages, and I'm certified in 3 countries where I lived, learned, and practiced.
Goodness, I always learn more and more about you, Senda, every time I meet you. Dr. Judith Gurdian.
I'm Judith Gurdian. I'm an OB/GYN. I've been at Shady Grove since 1987. Served in the military before that as up to rank of major. Had 3 children, did a lot of moving, and a prior career as an English teacher.
The English teacher, yes, indeed. That always tends to come up when I'm writing something, and she's like, "That is not the way to write that sentence." So, good times had by all, though. Let's launch into some questions. Now, all of us, of course, are women and have been in medicine for quite some time. Everybody here has been in at least a decade. Tell me about some changes or challenges that you have faced as a woman in medicine. That's going to vary a bit. I know generationally. I'm going to start with Judy because I bet that she has the longest track record here in medicine, and things were quite different. Tell us, first of all, when did you graduate from medical school? Then tell us about the evolution.
I graduated medical school in 1979, and I was one of a very small handful of women in my class. I had an Air Force scholarship to pay for my education because I didn't have the money. And when I applied to all 3 branches of the military, the Army told me that they had a lot of highly qualified young men applying and did not see themselves giving the position to a woman who would just have babies and quit. Then when I got out and opened my practice, we went to 6 banks before we finally found somebody willing to finance our practice, and our husbands had to sign our loans. So the prejudice in those days was very much in your face. You knew it was coming, and it was just what you dealt with if you wanted to become a doctor.
That is amazing. First of all, for them to tell you point blank, you're just going to have some babies. Why are you even here, essentially, is just kind of dumbfounding. I can't even imagine that. Knowing you, I bet there's quite the strong presence of return commentary to that statement.
The best was when they asked me what I would do if my husband moved, and I looked at him and I said I'd pack his bags.
Well, at least you would do that.
At least I would do that.
At least you would do that. I'm going to go on to Senda Beltaifa. Dr. Beltaifa, tell us a little bit about when did you graduate from medical school, to give us some context, and then what has changed?
Yes, I graduated in 1994, so I've been a doctor for over 30 years now. And as I mentioned before, I had to travel around the world with my husband because of his job in an international organization and have children along the way. So every country I went to, I had to study and recertify to get the license to practice medicine in that country. And one of the challenges I face, like many women, is the system structures that do not support women around their family and maternal roles. So every time you have to kind of restart. And that was quite challenging. And the system structure around flexibility, maternity leaves, and the role of women in their family and maternal roles does not take into account women coming into medicine. So the system basically is not built around them and for that purpose. So women find themselves struggling and trying to make tough decisions between their family and their career, and especially if they don't have support.
That's absolutely true. I mean, there's this question here, the statistic about how 22.6% of women are not staying full-time, but they're more than full-time because you do the job of being a physician all day and you come home to that second shift. And so no matter how resourced you are, how sophisticated your husband's or your partner's help may be, you're finishing work, and especially when the children are very little, often the women are the one who are doing a lot of that heavy lifting of childcare.
Absolutely.
And at least directing some of the household management and so forth. So the funny thing is that to refer to women as being part-time to me is always a little, I don't know a single woman ever who's part-time doing anything. Everybody's doing a lot all the time. What's changed for you, Dr. Plate?
Well, I graduated medical school in 1999. And for me, going into medicine or choosing to go into medicine there were no barriers for me. My family was incredibly supportive, although there were no physicians in our family, but they were always hardworking folks. And so they appreciated that. For me, it was that I wanted to be a surgeon. And I had people tell me, well, there's no way you can be a mother and a wife and a surgeon. That's just never going to happen. And unfortunately, at some point, I realized I had decided to go into medicine when I was in high school. And I kept hearing that. And looking back, I realized when I started medical school, I didn't have the goal of being a surgeon anymore. I was thinking family medicine, emergency medicine, and thinking back, especially when we were going to this podcast, I don't remember when that changed. Because in high school, as a matter of fact, if you look at my senior write-up in my in our yearbook, it said to become a successful surgeon. But when I went into medical school, it had been kind of drilled into me. You can't do all those things. So I was going to go into internal medicine or family practice or emergency medicine. Mm-hmm. And then I did my surgical clinical rotation. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to be a surgeon. And that's kind of sad that I don't remember when that was kind of twisted for me. Because in high school, I was going to be a surgeon. That was it. I was very lucky in my career. Half of our residents at Howard University Hospital, or half of our surgical residents were women.
Wow.
And so it was, great to see that. But I still got, I remember one case I was doing with a surgeon, and they had another physician's assistant in there, and they had a conversation without me participating about, the surgeon asked me what I wanted to do. I said general surgery. He said, well, no man is going to accept you going to do an appendicitis at midnight. So you're not going to get married? And the PA would answer, of course she's going to get married. And then, I'm the dutiful, was very military-like at the time.
Right.
So you don't really answer. And the PA and the surgeon were both men. Mm-hmm. And the PA and the surgeon said, don't you want kids? The PA said, of course she wants kids. And they had this discussion about how I wouldn't be doing anything. And I was just silent.
About you, without you.
Right.
That's crazy.
Without me participating.
Yeah. It's so funny. All of us have, I'm sure, some story about being overlooked or being assumed as far as what you will be without your consent, which is a very interesting thing. There are studies about children, and little boys and little girls have equal confidence and have equal ambition and equal wanting to conquer whatever until about 12, when society begins to tell women otherwise. And that still is the case now. It's not something that was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It still is the case. And it's something that you really kind of have to be careful about and battle against. Does anybody else have a specific story about, being in a situation as a woman and you're like, well, this is going to be a little challenging to navigate?
It wasn't a challenge, but I had a very, very high-risk obstetrical patient, and I had managed her for days, did a C-section. She almost died, saved her life. And at the end of this, she looks at me and she says, but when am I going to see a doctor?
Yeah, that's always insane. I in the emergency department when I was practicing, once in a blue moon, it didn't happen to me very often, not as often as it happened to some other of my women colleagues. I would come in the room, and I'm African American as well as being female, and the patient occasionally would say, "You're the doctor? You're the doctor?" And I would always respond, "Were you expecting somebody taller?" Because this is what you get. so let's roll. But it is challenging sometimes to have those situations come through, but navigating them with resilience. Everything I've heard about all of you suggests that there is a core strength of steel resilience to bounce back and keep going, which is amazing. Dr. Beltaifa, when you were going from country to country to country, which countries were there, and were there different gender expectations at each of those countries?
Yes, well, I grew up in Tunisia, North Africa. And then I moved to the Middle East and the United Arab Emirates, and then I came to the United States.
Easy countries then, as far as gender roles.
Very much so, yeah. But I think one common thing that unites all of us, which goes without saying, why did we go into this field in the first place, is our desire to understand how things work and our common sense of service. I personally have been in my family and with my friends, a person to go to help solve problems. People come to share things with me, and I kind of try to help them and comfort them and help them solve their issues. And that sense of service is inherent to my personality, and that's what attracts me to medicine. I think medicine was a natural path for me. Being a physician just formalized that role of being there for others and serving.
I think that's common amongst not only female physicians, but male physicians. One thing that I've found is there are all studies about how women as physicians communicate better, have better outcomes with their patients. It's very known that I'm not going to say we're better, but there are studies that kind of back up how we approach. The difficult thing sometimes to navigate if you're in a majority male presence or specialty is to think through, there's always these assumptions built in that the woman's going to be more nurturing, and so you're going to help this patient and pat him on the back, not me. And it's like, well, we all can have these conversations. We need to be vulnerable enough across both genders to be able to lean into some of that nurturing aspect. Going back one more time, then we're going to go forward a little bit. I was trying to think through before this podcast, what specialties did I, as far as representation, did I never, ever see a woman do when I was in training? I graduated from medical school in 96. It wasn't until actually recently that I ever saw a female neurosurgeon. I'd never met one until the last 5 years or so, but that's beginning to be a barrier that's broken. I had not met a cardiac surgeon who was female until the last 5 to 10 years or so, really 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. What other specialties do you think of that still take you like, a little off guard when you see a woman walk in the room as that specialty? It's something you have to kind of, your own biases start to click when that happens.
Urology as opposed to urogynecology.
That's definitely the case. Definitely
yes.
The case. Always just surprising and extreme.
I had a resident on my urology rotation that wouldn't let me go in the room.
Wouldn't let you go in the room?
Because he didn't want to embarrass the men.
Well. And how many gynecologists were men at that time?
Yes, almost all of them.
Exactly. That's very, very interesting. Anybody else have any specialties? I always like, it's surprising to see you here.
No, I would echo what you said. I mean, definitely neurosurgery. I actually have only met one in all these years, one female neurosurgeon. Yeah. And I don't know that I know any female urologists.
I know of one.
I know a couple.
Yeah, I know of one. How about you, Senda? Any ones that come to mind other than what we've mentioned?
I would echo the urology was the biggest surprise,
Yeah. When you started in pathology, was it majority men? Because I know here the statistics say that it's now a lot more women-friendly, I suppose, as a specialty.
When I started, I think it was kind of equal. Mm-hmm. But the challenge, I think, for women is not to just get in, is to stay and grow in the role. That's what I find is the biggest challenge. I mean, the structure is not built to support women, and there's certainly leadership and a mentorship gap in this field, and women are not supported throughout their career, especially throughout their mid-career when they're expected to have other family roles, and that's where I think the major challenge is.
I think that's true. But we're going to segue and talk into sponsorship, mentorship, representation in general. I have been fortunate enough to speak on the issue of women in medicine frequently. One thing I always say, because women have a tendency, I find, to feel like they have to do it all. I have to go to work. I have to come home. I got to, take care of the kids. I got to clean my own toilet. I got to wash the dishes. I'm like, if you think about the fact that in an hour or two, how you work and you're being compensated fairly is the hope, although it's not necessarily always the case. You can get your whole house cleaned sometimes for an hour or two of work that you're doing. So why would you spend 4 hours or 6 hours or longer doing that work? And so that's one of the things Dr. Beltaifa talked about, not having that support system. Build your own support system. Build it. Sometimes that tax comes because you have to pay, but build it. Now let's talk about sponsorship and mentorship as well. So how important do you all think sponsorship and mentorship is? Sponsorship being that person who's going to speak for you when you're not in the room and making sure that you are kind of given opportunities and pointing them out for you. Mentorship is kind of helping you grow your career in the directions that you want it to grow, giving you that representation, giving you that education a bit on things you should look out for. How important do you all think that is?
That's incredibly important. And I think, honestly, as any gender giving you that, because there were not a lot of women there's still actually at my hospital are not a lot of women in surgeon. So my mentor was a male. I was incredibly fortunate that I was very well supported in my hospital. Again, I've been it was Washington Adventist Hospital, now White Oak Medical Center, since I finished my residency. And so I really flew under a lucky star, I think, because although there was not a lot of female representation, they were very well supported me. My mentor who hired me, helped me with difficult surgical cases. And then he also led me on a leadership path. So to become the first female chief of surgery, to become the first female chief of staff. And I was very well supported by, again, it wasn't just not a lot of women in surgery. It's not a lot of women in medicine, not the majority. And so I was very fortunate that I was incredibly supported in that way. But at the same time, looked at my mentors from residency. So sometimes you can't go to your current institution, but you look back and, my friends have become program directors, or my co-residents have become residency program directors, student clerkship directors, chiefs of staff. Patricia Turner is a good friend of mine. She's CEO of the American College of Surgeons. So sometimes you can't necessarily look in your institution, but you can look around to where you've been before and also have that as mentorship and guidance too.
That's a great point. I do think that it's important to point out, though, that advocacy can come in any gender, though. And there are times when it's actually to your benefit to have a male point of view as far as what you want to do next. And so that's a really good thing to point out for sure. How about others? Mentorship, sponsorship, help.
I will echo some of what Dr. Plate said in a sense that here at Adventist Healthcare, at least, I feel we are very fortunate to work in an organization that empowers physicians and that empowers women in leadership. And I was very lucky to be working with a male mentor who really helped me and supported me to become the first chief of pathology and system medical director of laboratories of Adventist Healthcare. I think I'm the first female to hold that position, and he believed in me at times where I did not even believe in myself, and I thought this was going to be hard, but that support is very important. The organization also sponsors leadership training and those kind of seminars and conferences where you meet with other leaders and you bounce ideas back and forth, and you kind of gain that confidence in yourself, because one of the challenges is that you always feel you're not ready. I need to get ready is just one way to postpone that and until you get comfortable, or you don't believe in yourself, or you don't know the right people. One of the things that's very important that I learned throughout this journey is also to build relationships, because you can be excellent in what you do and you can be the expert in your field, but if you're working in a silo, you can't get far in your leadership. You need to know people, you need to understand the people and the mission, and you need to build relationships and keep your focus on, obviously, patient safety first and the power of the team and the safety of the team, so they believe in you. And you don't have to always have the right answers. You could be wrong, but when you build trust with your team, that's when they believe you and they follow you, even if you're not always successful or don't always have the right answers.
It's very true. Now, thinking through advocacy. When I have mentees, and they have imposter syndrome, or they're thinking, I can't do this. I'm like, there were a group of majority men who at some point decided they were going to go to the moon. And they did not have representation of people who were just walking around the moon. And so if they can get to the moon, you can get to the boardroom or beyond. You need to lean into that. Dr. Judith Gurdian.
That's really funny because, again, when I started, there really weren't any female mentors. I mean, they just didn't exist. And my advocates were my parents who believed that I could do anything. And from the time I was a little girl, it's like, you can do anything. When I talked about medicine, they're like, you can do that. And so that support was always there. And then as I went through the system, I had somebody in the military that was very much a mentor for me. But I think as I went through the process of developing my career and then again going into leadership at the hospital, I tried to really reach out to other people and provide that service for them so they weren't also kind of swimming in the dark.
I think that's an important point because, as a successful woman, you get to a certain point and you really have to reach back. You have to reach back and try to not only if somebody asks you, but sometimes you have to pull people forward. Now, you don't want to drown yourself in obligations. And I understand that bit. But you have to give back to be able to help people get further so that at the end of a 10-year span, there aren't just still one or two women standing in a room full of men in medicine, which is very, very, very important. So, one thing I have said as well about the emergency room where I used to work, I would see women scurrying about and they were in their 8th month of pregnancy working. And they'd go into a room and run a code. The code would end. They would come back to their desk and they'd be on Amazon, ordering Halloween costumes for their kid. And they'd go into another patient's room and they would be teaching them about their heart care and so forth. And so you have a woman who is saving life, growing life, directing life at home, as well as educating patients. I've never seen a man approach doing that many things during a shift. It just does not exist because there's not that pressure. When you think through all of the span of your career and going forward, what are some targets any of you might have that you think, this is a gap that we may need to fill? This is a thing that we may need to do. I think about everything from compensation to pushing women into leadership. I had to say push, but usually you have to kind of make a high suggestion. So perhaps you should. But what do you think would be one of the more powerful things to do to kind of advance women in medicine or advance women in medicine and leadership?
I would say just encourage, we have a lot of medical students that come through, or we did for a while. And, it's always the same, especially in surgery. The male students, when you ask them a question, they'll answer fully, but the women will answer like this. Yeah. And so I said, no, you're a surgeon here, you're a female surgeon in here right now, and you speak up. So I think just allowing them that space to speak up, to show them that it's okay, to just be a mentor, just like those who mentored you. I think that that's the most important thing, and the easiest way to get everyone in. And again, not just, I wouldn't say just mentor towards the career, but towards leadership, like Dr. Beltaifa was saying as well. I think that's incredibly important because sometimes it's just not brought up. It's like, oh, you're going to do your specialty and that's fine. But no, teach them. These are the things you need to go to do, get into leadership. Yeah. This is how, like you were saying, the female imposter syndrome. This is how to get over that because you deserve to be here. And if you're a leader, you deserve to be a leader. Although that female imposter syndrome is very common. I've had it before too. Like, these folks chose me as a leader. Suckers.
Yes.
Really?
Scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Exactly. Was no one else available?
I mean, one piece of being a good leader is to identify other leaders and open the door for them. It starts there. And then leadership needs to be intentional and not just encouragement. So having the structure in place to help females become leaders. We are underrepresented in C-suites, in research PIs, like research panels and things like that. So that needs to be intentional to identify the individuals and help them and support them so they become the leaders that we want them to be. And another thing also that needs to be looked into is the workplace structure. So when medicine was designed, it was not designed to support women as like whole people and having to do all the roles that Dr. McNeil was mentioning. And that's impressive to have somebody multitask, especially an ED doctor. That's very, very impressive. And policies around parental leave, flexible scheduling, and equity in compensation and advancement make a huge difference in retention and growth. So supporting women in medicine is not just about fairness, or it's a smart strategy for building stronger physicians, stronger leaders, better care, and more sustainable systems. And that's what healthcare needs today.
Can't disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to click over a little bit and talk about clinical medicine. Still, it seems that studies and what we're taught, and even in journals, is often based on that 70-kilogram man. And, not only is it that 70-kilogram man, but generally speaking, in research, in clinical research and beyond, it's generally a 70-kilogram white man. It's not a wide range of type of even man. And so you think about that, and you think about women's health, think about women's heart health, think about women's reproductive health, and some of the assaults that are occurring on that as well. You're talking to patients all the time, Dr. Plate. You're talking to patients, Dr. Gurdian, and you're looking through a scope at the results of either good care or good health or not so good health. Let's talk about clinical medicine just for a moment and what you see as far as opportunities for women to lean into better health for themselves. Okay, so what does that look like? And you think about all the patients you see, and they're, once again, multitasking and taking care of this and that. And most of the women I know, especially if they got children, are uber focused on taking care of everybody else but themselves. And so when I meet one who's late with their colonoscopy or late with their breast exam or late, mammography and the pap smear and their general exam, I really get annoying. I get annoying. I'm like, you're a friend of mine. I want you to be here in 5, 10, 15, 50 years. I will drive you to your colonoscopy. If you don't have anybody else, I will be that designated driver if that's what's needed. So tell me what you see and what you'd like to see change.
I absolutely agree with you. We're terrible. We are just terrible. I'm sitting here thinking, overdue for the dentist, need to get my eyes checked. So
I will be your designated driver, Judith Gurdian.
I have a list, but you also go, but I need this and I need that and the other thing, and somehow or other we still step back. It's funny because the last 4 years I've been working with residents from Howard, and one of the things that I talk to them about is how to balance their lives. They need to maintain a part of their life that's just them, that you're you mommy, you're you wife, you're you doctor, but you have to protect the you that's just you and do the things that make you happy and bring personal joy to your life. And that is also a really important form of taking care of ourselves. If we don't read, if we don't listen to music, if we don't go out, if we don't do those things that nourish us as a human being, there's not much point to the rest of it.
Can't disagree with that.
Absolutely.
At all.
I mean, you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. It's just like being on an airplane and you need to put your mask on before you put it on a child or somebody else.
Very true.
Exactly.
Very true. I will be checking in on your dentist appointment, Dr. Gurdian. It's when I turned 40, it was the one thing that I made sure that my health that I did. I have a primary care doctor who actually examines me. I have a dentist that I go to at least once a year. It is something that I think it's important. And when I run across a woman who's doing those things we all do, making sure that the husband gets to the dentist and making sure the kids are getting their yearly, their checkups, and it's a dry cleaning in. Is the dog been walked? Has the dog been fixed? You're doing all of these things, and then
you need your teeth cleaned.
Yeah, you need your teeth cleaned.
Well, and the important thing is what you just pointed out, what you just did, and I have no doubt that you would take her to Dr. Gurdian to a colonoscopy.
100%.
So I think it's also reaching out to women and knowing I'm there for you. I don't have any kids, so I may have more time, and so Senda, if you need your colonoscopy, I'm happy to take you. So I think that I will. I won't do your colonoscopy.
I'll read my own biopsy.
But I think that sense of one of the important things is to get that sense of community and listening to podcasts on this. There are women in medicine groups, and it's incredibly important. Reach out to your former residency co-residents or even students that we still get together and talk to each other, and not just about medicine, but you want to complain about your husband or your kids or your dog or whatever it is. And I think that's an incredibly important piece of taking care of yourself, is to just get together with other women and just talk it out, or have have a meal together and 100%. Just laugh, cry, do whatever you need to do. But I think that's incredibly important in taking care of yourself, because as Dr. Beltaifa said, if you don't take care of yourself, and I point that out to my patients, I'll have patients that come in and have a mammogram in 2 or 3 years, and I've been taking care of my parents and my kids, and if you're gone, you're not here to take care of them. So Same as women in medicine. And then, as you said before, find your own support. I have a housekeeper as well, because I finally decided, after a week of being on call and up all the time and operating, and the weekend, I did not want to clean my house. Yeah. I wanted to do those things that I love to do. I wanted to go out. I wanted to read. So I hired a housekeeper. And one might think, for one person, yes. I mean, does she come every day? No. But I found my own support in that way.
No, it's important too. And I want to be respectful of women out there who don't have that choice. But for those of us who spent 12 years in higher education or more, who are at the hospital potentially at 7 o'clock in the morning and we don't walk out until after 6 o'clock at night, there's a reason why you do that education. There's a reason why you work that hard. And one of those things is to be able to take care of yourself, your infrastructure, and your family. And so spending that money on something like that so you can actually take a nap, take a walk, talk to your friends, go to dinner, those things are very important. I'm going to close with the following bit that I think kind of heads off of this very nicely, which is, depression and suicide. For female physicians, depression is 2 to 3 times higher in physicians who are women compared to the men who are physicians alone. And as far as the general population is concerned, men have 1.4 times the amount of suicide completion as their male counterparts in the general population, but women have over 2 times the amount of suicide completion in medicine compared to their female cohorts out there. So, it's funny because when I have mentees who are going into medicine or in medicine, I make sure I lean into asking them the question, not only how are you and fine, but how are you? Prove it. I have to prove it. Prove it to me. How are you fine? Because of the fact that women who are physicians have not only the means but the expertise to complete a suicide, unlike the general population if you think through it. And so it's very important to lean into that wellness and making sure that burnout is kept in the forefront of how you're working. Thoughts, folks? This wasn't even a conversation back and
No, I think when Lorna Breen committed suicide, yes, I think that was such a huge motivator for all of us to kind of be and it came during COVID too, where I think, especially for you and myself at Shady Grove, we were really leaning into how our colleagues were doing. I mean, I think that was probably what I felt was the most important thing I could do as president at that point. And when you look at people, when you ask them how they are, you often see the answer written in their eyes.
Absolutely, you do. Yeah. Or the lack of their eye contact. Yeah. I'm fine. They look down. It's like,
But you got to take the time to stop and look.
Yeah, this is very, very true as well. All right, we're going to close this out. I'm going to have each of you tell me something about your day or your week that makes it all worth it. All right? Makes it all worth it. I'm going to start because I'm going to give you time to actually think through this. See the look in your eyes like, what? This wasn't on the paper.
I'm not fine.
What makes it worth it for me is the impact that I, as a leader, have an ability to have on the lives of patients and physicians in medicine. And it gives me the means to be able to take care of my family the way I want. And, it's just great. It's wonderful to have the kind of impact you can have in the role that I have at Adventist Healthcare. Cynthia Plate, it's all yours.
I really, we're all having we have a horrible week, a horrible day. And when that one patient comes up to you and says, thank you for holding my hand before anesthesia took over. Thank you for getting me through my surgery. That makes it all worth it. Even if you're having the worst day in the world, that one patient just thanking you and crying and hugging you and that's what really makes it all worth it to me.
I know.
It can turn a bad day around like that.
It's funny because HR may not want to hear this, but getting a patient hug is like the best thing ever. It really just is. Dr. Beltaifa.
Well, in my specialty, unfortunately, I do not get to see patients.
If you're hugging patients, we have an issue. We want to call HR.
I see pieces and parts of patients, and what makes my day is when we are able to identify what's wrong with this patient, because my specialty is based on understanding the pathologic basis of disease and finding the reasons for why the patient went through a procedure, and giving that answer with accuracy and safety is the key to, I would say, 99% of the clinical decisions made in the physician's offices, my colleagues. So although I don't get to see the patients, I get to be part of their healthcare and be an important part of their healthcare because of the work that we do. And what inspires me at the end of the day is the women who lead with strength and heart, and especially those who create space for others to grow. What I will say, a final thing to women in the healthcare field and in leadership is try to imagine your life in hindsight. When you look back, what would have mattered most to you? Let that guide you. It helps you know what to prioritize at the moment. And always remember, you may open the door for someone behind you just like someone else did for you. As women in medicine, one of the most powerful things we do is to create space for others.
Creating space. I agree 100%. Judith Gurdian, take us home.
I am so fortunate that I love what I do.
You do.
I love what I do. I love practicing medicine. I love learning. I love teaching. I love my patients. I mean, some of my patients I've taken care of for over 30 years, and I just consider myself to be so incredibly fortunate to do something that I still love.
I mean, I have to say, knowing you personally, it's written all over your face and being every time I see you, how much you love what you do, and it's really kind of aspirational to want to do this as long as you have, with as much passion as you have. All right, folks, there you have it. Women in Medicine and Adventist Healthcare. We've had a great panel of podcast joiners today, and looking forward to our next podcast led by me. But I want to thank all of my guests here today talking about this subject. I hope that if we can just kind of guide even one or two people to kind of join us in medicine, it's a great place to be, despite all the ranges of what we talked about. As a woman in medicine, you can make more impact on human life than you would do probably in most other ways of making a living. So we heavily encourage that, right?
Right.
Thanks for having us, Dr. McNeil.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Charting with Dr. McNeil.